Tommy's phone.
What was that?
My phone. Sorry, guys.
Oh.
And
Are
we're
we live now?
We are. Hey everybody, it's Keith with Trained by Tex, and we're all here. We got a special guest today.
Tommy's phone.
What was that?
My phone. Sorry, guys.
Hi, special guest.
Sorry, audio reverb. It's always going to have some technical difficulties here, but we've got Bryn's going to introduce our special guest here in a minute, and we're going to have Chris. He's going to go over a Diag.net post with us all. We're going to enjoy some of that discussion. I think we're going to talk about some other stuff that's on Diag.net as well. And then Brian's got a little case study for us, I think. Are we passing that one today?
I got a little one that I can do. It's not the one I wanted to do. I have to do a little bit more preparing for that, but I do have a little one I can talk about.
Okay. And then I think, Bryn, you've also got a little demo of a tool you've been playing with. So I think we're going to cover all that stuff today. But Bryn, why don't you introduce our special guest for today?
We are very fortunate to have Pete Meier on with Motor Age, and we're going to chat with Pete a little bit, and he's going to kind of tell us some of his story, which is pretty cool. I know a little bit about Pete, but I did listen to his episode on Remarkable Results today, actually, which is, I think, episode 39. If you guys are familiar, if you're not familiar, get familiar and listen to his episode. And there's many others. Very valuable information, very great resource for our industry. But Pete's got a really cool story, so we're gonna kind of give Pete this table, and we're gonna kind of chat with Pete, let him tell his story. But also, June 20th, isn't that right? 2 days from now, Pete?
Yep, Thursday. Thursday is 7 p.m. Eastern.
7 p.m. Pete is doing a webinar with TSTG, and they're going to do a scope webinar. It should be very good webinar, so he's going to chat about that as well. So, Pete, thank you very much for coming on today.
I appreciate the invite to all you guys. I really do. Let me just say from the outset that it was my good fortune to meet a few of you guys, 2 years ago, I think.
Yeah, it's almost been 2 years. Yeah, it's been 2 years. Yeah.
And you guys were just kind of getting started out. And the one thing that really impressed me was the how you guys are trying to raise the bar, with other technicians, how you promote getting involved in the industry, getting training and all of that. And I want to thank you for that. I think, too, I was probably one of the first to bring some attention to you guys. I remember a little newsletter story about you guys.
Yeah.
I remember that. That was awesome.
Yeah. About you guys which was kind of cool. But no, I appreciate the opportunity of being here. Thanks very much. Thanks for allowing this platform to kind of promote the webinar that we've got coming up this Thursday, as Brent mentioned. Let me just say a little something about the webcast. First, we were very fortunate to get Pico to sponsor the webcast for us. We don't really try to make any real money off of these webinars. Try to cover my expenses for the travel and stuff like that, just to get back and forth and get it on the air. And I'll go into that when I tell you a little bit about my background. You'll understand that a little bit more. So we were able to offer this, to our attendees and to our readers, and to your audience for free.
That's awesome.
The title of the webinar, if I can fit it all out, is Making Money with Your Scope, Top 10 Tests You Can Perform and Make Money With Today. And the reason that we kind of focused on that particular topic is, when you get online and you see all the Facebook posts, many of you guys are included in those, and you share. First of all, I got to say that I'm thrilled to see how many guys and gals are going back to the scope. I remember when I first got involved with Motor Age, and I would go around the country talking to classes and talking to techs, the number of people that were using scopes that time in a group of 30, 40 guys, maybe one would raise their hands. And you're seeing a big shift in that now, which I think is fantastic. And of course, you guys are sharing the more advanced tests, the end cylinder tests that you're doing, the pressure waveform analysis that you're doing, the NVH stuff that you're doing, and other very creative uses for the scope. But I also noticed that a lot of guys and gals were kind of putting out their 2 cents on these Facebook groups that, that's all well and good, but I don't know which buttons to push just to get a pattern on the screen. And I'm a real big believer that you've got to have a strong foundation before you can build on that. If your foundation isn't solid, whether it's electrical or scope use or scan tool interpretation, then sitting in a class on some advanced technique, it's just going to go right over your head. So that's what we decided to focus on in the scope class. You know, if you've got that scope, it's gathering dust, or you only play with it a couple of times, the focus of the webcast is to give you some foundational materials, how to get it set up so you can capture something on the screen. And then if all you got was the scope, let me show you a few things that you can do with it that will help you make money, help you make you more efficient, help you do a good job for your customers, and get you friendly with that scope. And then you can start building on that platform. So that's kind of the focus there. Not only will we have a couple of handouts available as well, we put together a toolbox reference that highlights these different tests, how to set up the scope, what to look for, you know, in those test results. So some very fundamental stuff that anyone can download, stick in your toolbox, and then use that on a daily basis to help them, you know, master that tool. So anyway.
Sweet. That sounds great. Going back to the folks that are seeming like they're adopting the concept of using scopes in their diagnostic, everyday diagnosis use, you know, I feel like a lot of us, including you, Pete, have been kind of guilting them into that, you know, maybe. Are we getting there?
Well, I think so. I mean, it's like, I always told guys when I teach classes or make a presentation, I back office stuff, I don't really consider myself a teacher per se, but whenever I make a presentation to technicians, I'll tell them the scan tool is going to tell you what the computer is being told. But that doesn't always mean the computer is being told the truth. And the way to find out whether the computer is being told the truth is to pull out that scope and look at those signals for yourself. And another great thing about it is now with all the accessories that are available, you can test nearly any drivability parameter you want with the scope. You can check fluid pressure, you can check line pressure, you can look at vacuum. I mean, there's just so many things that you can do with it now as compared to when I first started with the scope. So, go ahead.
And to back you up, you know, you mentioned that you need that foundation. Maybe you guys agree with me, but I found that I learned more about electronics, automotive electronics, once I started using a scope. So sometimes, like, you know, those of you that might kind of be nervous to kind of push forward if you don't really understand automotive electronics, I'd say definitely do your best to get that foundation. Don't let it stop you, because I think, you know, I know personally I've learned from using a scope more about automotive electronics.
Oh yeah, absolutely. In fact, that's one of the things that we're going to also focus on during the course of the webinar. If anyone who knows me, anyone's been following my stuff for any length of time, knows that I'm a real big proponent of voltage drop testing. It was one thing that tripped me up many years ago, and I just decided I wasn't going to let that happen. And I messed around with it. Not very comfortable with the testing technique, but it's still something I find trips up guys all around the country.
Now, Pete, I've been hearing about this story that kept on tripping you up like a couple times now, but I've never heard the story.
All right, so let's share that story.
I'd love to hear it.
I was a technician with a major company before I joined Motor Age. I was with them for 5 years. And it was kind of cool. The first year I was there, they had a contest for their technicians. It started off like a skills contest. It was, you know, local, then regional, then national. And I was very fortunate to be able to go to the national contest my first year. And I was very optimistic about my chances at winning. I mean, I blew the Witten test out of the water. I went through all the bench stations, knocked them out of the park. And then it came time to do the diagnostic assignment, right? And I'll never forget this. This is the first time that I met Chris Chesney and George Lesniak. They were my judges. And it was a GMC pickup with a MAF sensor circuit code that I knew right away. Voltage drop test, the one I've been reading all about in ITN, was going to help me solve this problem and win this contest. And I knew where to put the leads. Okay, I knew the process. But what I didn't understand was the language of the meter. I didn't understand what the meter was trying to tell me when I was taking these measurements, and I just blew it. I just blew it out of the water. And George, God bless him, he was trying really hard to kind of give me these little hints, but it just wasn't clicking. And the longer it went by, the more frustrated I got, and I went home and I was just totally mad at myself. So when I got back to the shop, I took a battery, some wire, a couple of light bulbs in my meter, and I just started playing around with the resistance readings the voltage readings until it clicked. And you get that light bulb moment. And when you do, you're asking yourself, why did I get this sooner? It was like, geez, that was like the simplest thing in the world once you get it. But until you do, it's FM, right? We're on that camp. Definitely. If you're a tech, you know what FM stands for. But like I said, when I got that done, and I shared some of that. I actually wrote a series of articles for Motor Age after I got that learning experience, and it was the very, very first webinar that G and I did together was voltage drop testing, and I actually shared exactly what I did in my own shop, and encouraged, and I still do encourage every tech that I meet. Here's how I did it. Here's how you can do it. Go home, play with it. I guarantee you that you will get that light bulb moment, and then you're going to be the go-to guy in the shop for fixing electrical problems. Well,
I'd like to take a moment, if you don't mind, to kind of name drop. I would like to share a little something about your involvement in the 2015 Automechanica, obviously, right? And
yes.
You asked Jamie Lazarus to teach a class on voltage drop testing there.
I did.
And it was 2 classes you asked. He taught that class twice, but then you asked him to teach it a third time, the same conference, or am I mistaken?
No, that was the same conference. I believe, though, that if I'm not mistaken, in 2015 was when actually Jim Morton and Jamie had issues and were not going to be able to attend.
That was 17.
That was 17?
Yeah, you had Brandon actually ended up having to cover.
I was just getting ready to say, a young man by the name of Brandon Steckler that we all know and love stepped up and got his first taste of a national program and just knocked it out of the park. And of course, now we know how far he's come now. And
he went way out of the park.
Wish him the best of luck across the pond.
Yeah,
he's doing very well there. So very proud of that. Very proud that he's part of the Motor Age family.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, it's a privilege. It's an honor to say, I know the guy and he's a friend.
But going back to what you were alluding to, Bren, there with Jamie, if you go to a training event, most of the training events up to that time, of course, like Vision, ATE, the big event, all of the ones that were going around the country, there were a lot of advanced level classes. We were very fortunate in 2015 and 2017 to be able to offer attendees the chance to come to a national training event at no charge, at no cost to them. They just had to show up. And I have to tell you, it's something that really stood out in my memory in 2015. We had close to 2,000 people come out for that event. And as I greeted and met people in that hallway, and if you were there, Jesus, the hallway was like 2 miles long, right?
Yeah.
It was quite a haul from either side. But I was constantly meeting people who were coming up to me telling me how excited they were about the event, the training they got. And you know what? Almost the vast majority of those guys and gals that showed up had no clue who some of these guys, the instructors, were. They'd never heard of John Thornton. They never heard of Scott Manna, never heard of G. Trulia, right? And they live in Chicago, which really blew my mind.
Yeah.
But the thing was, it really drove home something I believe since I started with Motor Age is that there are a lot of technicians. In fact, there's 750,000 of us out there. And I think the vast majority of them are good. They want to be better, but they don't know how. They don't know where the resources are, and they can't. Sometimes they just can't afford to come. So to see all these faces come out was very exciting for me, and to hear the instructors come back after the conference and share how excited they were because there were new faces in the seats. There was excitement. There was involvement. The attendees didn't want to go to break. They didn't want to leave after class was over. It was a very, very exciting event for us.
2015 and 2017 for me, and near and dear to my heart. Those are events that I will always remember, and we appreciate your involvement with making that happen. 2015 was a big deal for me, but it was a great conference, like you say. 2017 near and dear to all of our hearts because that's where we all met. So Thank you.
Well, except Chris. Chris came later.
I came a can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where I shook your hand, Pete, because it was an honor to meet you.
Well,
I walked up to you and said, "Thank you for everything."
And I don't want to sound immodest. But I've shared this with everyone I've ever met. I was a tech for 35, 40 years. I'm very fortunate to have had the opportunity that I have and to be able to do what I do. But when I was at Tech, training resources was few and far between. If I went to my wife and told her that, hey, I want to spend $200, I'll wait for the dog. Anyway, if I went and told her, so I'm going to spend $200 to go to this 3-hour session at the local Holiday Inn, she looked at me like I was nuts, because we had mortgage to pay and diapers to buy, and we had the expenses. And what intrigues me is that a lot of people in the industry don't realize that even still, the median income for techs is right around $35,000-$40,000. That's not a lot of money, I was one of those guys. So when I got a chance to be involved with a national publication and have somewhat of a platform to share my ambitions, I guess you could say, I really wanted to do whatever I could to make those resources available to those men and women that weren't able to get them. That's what got us involved in social media. We were the first automotive publication to get on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all that stuff. We were the first to start a YouTube channel. Again, we started that again just as a way to reach the men and women back in the Bay, just to expand what coverage we could get out there. And then we started doing the webinars, of course, as I said before, and then that led to the 2015 event. But to be quite honest, when I get up in the morning and I go to work, my first and foremost goal is, what can I do today that's going to help a man or help a woman in this business make a better living for themselves, earn a better living for their families? That's what it all comes down to, and that's why I was very excited about to see what you guys do. You're encouraging people to get that knowledge, to get that training, and especially now with the challenges that we all face in terms of the technology we're working on, it's more critical than ever. If you're going to get it done right, if you're going to be able to make a living doing it, you've got to have that information, and that's, I think, what we're all here, trying to do in our own way.
Well, going back to your episode 39, which was 2 years ago on Carm's podcast.
Oh, I don't remember. It's like one of the very. I did one of the very first ones with him. It was quite a while ago, but yeah.
Anyways, you used the word undermine. You didn't want to undermine what trainers that do this for a living do, and I really appreciate that. And I want to take the opportunity to make sure that everybody knows that we feel the same way. We don't want to undermine anything anybody's doing. We want to, kind of like you, and follow your lead, is to make things available for some of those that haven't even considered this, kind of open up the world to them. Like, it's kind of like drugs, right? Give them a taste, if you will.
Yeah.
And, but at the same time, we really want to promote the traditional training as well. We want to put butts in seats as well. So we really appreciate that from you. But I just want to take that moment to, if you listen to his show, he says the same exact thing. He doesn't want to undermine what paid trainers are doing, but he wants to make sure that that we can reach more people that don't even know this stuff exists or can't afford to be there.
And I'm going to address that. I haven't really discussed this in a public forum ever before, but our very first webinar, when we got the word out that we were going to be offering this webinar for free, the very first one that we did, we got people that were mad at us.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, we had one that actually threatened to sue us because they swore we were going to be plagiarizing their information and blah blah blah. And I was still fairly new at the magazine, and I told my bosses, I said, I tell you what, I wrote all this content. So if there's anything in there that they find issue with, then fire me. I was at Tech yesterday. I can be at Tech tomorrow, We got past that hurdle. And there have been other instances along the line. When you do something that's not the norm, it's going to ruffle somebody's feathers. That's just the way people are, But to what Bryn was saying, it's like, I'm cautious. If you've ever come to one of my sessions, one of the very first things I tell people is, I am not an instructor. I have taught, in vocational programs, but a teacher takes knowledge they've learned, and then they share that with their students. So it's kind of a passing baton, if you will. If somebody were to come up to me and say, hey, you can't teach how to read a fuel pump current waveform because that's mine. Well, dude, this technique has been around for 30 years. So it's kind of everybody's by now, you know. But at the same token, there are those, and I think I even included this recently in a social post, there are those who are exemplary in our business. And yes, I do not want to distract the least little bit from their efforts and their hard work to push the envelope, if you will. You know, guys like Thornton and Manna and the whole Chicago team. G has developed content early on with OBD2. He won awards for his books on OBD2 diagnostics. But he charted that path. He did the homework. He did the research. They all put in the time and effort to create that material. Look at Brandon's class. You know, he did not just sit down in 2 hours and whip that out. You know,
That was years, yeah.
yeah. So I give them a lot of credit for what they do and the efforts that they put forward, and even the aftermarket programs. I mean, some of you guys have been involved with CTI and WorldPack, and you know how much work goes into developing those programs, the research that they do in their own shops, and all the things they do to break things and figure out why it broke and how to tell how it's going to break, and you know what I mean.
What a job, right?
Yeah, but so and the other thing I see is, and I shared this too. You can Google just about anything nowadays, and that's okay if the person Googling it takes the time to verify the integrity of the source. And I think one of the examples I shared in the chain was this guy near me that's showing people how to put 152A into their AC system. You know, that's just ridiculous. You know, but that goes on. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of that out there, as we all know. So yeah, like I said, I don't try to undermine anybody's ability. I tell people when I make a presentation that I'm the funnel. I go around to you guys. I go around to the Thorntons and the Trulias and the Mannas and the Xanders and all the rest of them. I know I'm leaving out a few names, guys. Hey, there are too many of you for me to list, so but you know who you are. And I take what I learned from them and I try to funnel what I can along. You know, that's all I'm trying to do as far as my role goes. And I'm very fortunate that a lot of them, you know, get to write for us anyway. So we get the first chance.
Cool. And you were mentioning you started writing case studies for Motor Rage. That's kind of how you got in the position you're in. Is basically that's where it started, right?
I had a Lexus CVAP that was kicking my butt, and I'm looking at the service information. I didn't understand Lexus, Toyota's terminology for their VSVs and all that nonsense, right? So it was just.
You mean five evap changes in 4 years? That hard? That was hard for you to.
At that time, it was 4, so it was okay. but it was a challenge. So I said, you know what? I'm not going to take this line down. I started doing my own research, and I put together all this information on Toyota's evap systems, and I had like a little textbook reference, a little toolbox reference, if you will. And my wife goes like, "Well, you took all the time to write all that stuff up. Why don't you send that to one of those magazines you always read?" And I just, oh, sure. And I did. And it was actually picked up by Import Car. Motor Rage couldn't use it, but they did ask me to start sharing some of the case studies. And I started writing their garage columns for them, which is why I started a lot of new talent out now, you know, by sharing their triumphs and tribulations.
Yeah, that's a cool story. I think of like Robbie Scrimshire, with now Standard, kind of in a similar boat. I think he started just writing case studies for Standard, and here he is, kind of managing curriculum development. I think pretty big deal, kind of cool.
A lot of us, I mean, a lot of the guys there who are Ryan Koyman, Bob Pattengale, you know, a lot of these guys, they were all in the trenches. They've gotten their battle scars. They know what it takes to make a living, and that's the other thing that I want to share here too. Make sure everybody's knows how I feel about it. The men and women who write for us, who train or have trained with us, nearly every one of them, to a man or a woman, shares one common trait. They're not in it for the money. They're in it because they love doing it and they love helping other techs come up the ladder, you know, improve their skill sets. Look at John Thornton. He's one of the most humble guys you'll ever meet, and he'll help you any way he can. Truly the same way. They're all the same way. George Menchu, fantastic example of that. But that's the common trait that they share, and I think that's what makes them special, you know. And there's, again, that's a lot of you guys in your group, same kind of way. You're doing this because you want to do it, because you know it's going to help somebody make, like I said earlier, help somebody make a better living, take care of their family a little better than they could the day before.
Oh, we're just doing our part to hold down Brim's ego, though. It's gigantic when he walks in the room. Can't even fit through the door.
Well, that's cool. We really appreciate you coming on and kind of sharing some of your stuff with us. Do you want to? You kind of touched on some of the stuff. Did you want to go any more with the webinar? Kind of tell them where to go to register or something, anything?
Well, I mean, if you go to the Motor Age Facebook page, you can find it there. The link's kind of long. I can probably throw that up in the comments. Well, there it is right there on the screen. And find the link there. In fact, I just put up a video post up there this morning, so it shouldn't be too hard to pick up on the Facebook page.
And just to go over again one more time, Peter, it's for the low price of
$0.
And you have a chance to win the 6-way breakout.
Oh, yeah, I forgot to say all about that. Yeah, Pico even kicked in that premium 6-way test kit, lead kit.
You can just send that my way if you want. It's okay.
Well, you know, now that we've had this conversation, I think let's exclude all of you guys from
Damn
it. I want to look like we're like.
You ruined it for us, Chris.
Sorry, guys. Nobody's listening anyway. It's okay.
Very cool. Well, Pete, you know, you'd be more than happy to have you kind of hang out for the rest of the live stream. But at any point you need to bow out and kind of, you know, move on with the rest of your evening, feel free. But thank you so much.
Well, I appreciate you guys to let me come on. We'll hang out for a little bit longer yet, just to see what kind of nonsense you boys get into.
Yeah, we won't start talking about you till you leave, okay?
Just remember, I can always go back and watch this on YouTube. But,
just to add to that, by the way, when you actually look at the Motor Age website, don't miss out on some of the other things that are there too, like Motor Age Connect and things like that, because those are other great resources. ASE study guides. I mean, there's probably none that are better.
I appreciate that, Keith. Yeah, we're working very hard to improve the study guide series, to make them even better for people who want to use them. I appreciate. I actually saw what you posted the other day on this Motor Age Training Connect. It is an Australian company, so you have to kind of get past the steering wheel being on the wrong side, or calling the hood a bonnet.
Yeah, that was Automate, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, Automate's the parent company that
right.
that content for us. But I tell you what, the reason that I promoted that or encouraged that partnership with my bosses was the quality of the content, which you've seen. And
yeah, it really is great.
Professionally produced. The graphics are exceptional. The content is exceptional. And what I liked about it, especially if you're a shop owner, and again, you're trying to get that training for your guys, you have to test out of the modules when you're done. So if you're not paying attention, you're not going to, and these aren't just, paper whip tests. They do test your understanding of the content.
Right.
And you're not going to go forward until you do. So it's a really good tool for that shop owner who's looking to get something, anything, into their hands of their technicians. And then, of course, we got the magazine itself. It's the oldest automotive trade publication in the country. It's been around since 1899. And, like it says on the cover, if you look close, advancing the automotive service professional. That's something that we all try very hard to.
Do you have some like archived case studies on horses?
Okay, well, here's a quick trivia question to see if you guys are really sure you are. You guys all know Wells Vehicle Electronics, right?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
What was the first product they ever manufactured?
Starter.
No.
That's a good guess. I feel like.
What was it?
Points. Was it points?
It was a wiring harness for an electric automobile.
Was it really?
Yeah. Wow. Back before Henry Ford made the gasoline powered car popular, the richer folks, they didn't like gasoline. It was too noisy and too dirty, and they didn't want to crank the thing over. Electric cars were actually the more popular choice at the time, and Wells got their start by making harnesses.
Nice.
No way.
If you ever get a chance to go to that factory, I think they're still in the same building up there in Fond du Lac, but it's right there by the train tracks, and they would load them up on the trains and ship them down the street to the assembly plant.
Wow.
We got to tell Mike to give us a tour.
That's, if you get a chance to do that, that's an awesome experience. It really is. I tell you what, that's something else that we found too. I went there, and this, I'm terrible getting old, names forget me. But the gentleman who that Mike kind of took his slot, he actually built quite a YouTube channel for Wells. And Lawrence, I can't think of his name right now. But he invited me up there shortly after I started with the magazine and took me through a tour. And we ended up going to some old storeroom, and we saw an old Chrysler flip chart way back before the days of the PowerPoint presentations, right? There's an old Chrysler training flip chart, and you'll never guess what the topic was.
What?
Leaking evaporators.
checking parasitic drain across the fuses.
Wow.
Really? No way.
They were teaching that. Chrysler was teaching that way back in the day. So
They must have taught it like that 1 month and then gave up.
So what happened?
yeah, well, it's just an example. A lot of the things that we get excited about now are not necessarily new. It's just that the technologies are now making them more useful. You know what I mean? Or able to do them. You know, just look at the basic engine design. There's so many changes that we go you know. But the only reason that they're there is because we can control them with computer controlled systems that are able to meet the speeds that are required. You know what I mean? But they're not new ideas. You can go back to some of these patents and see variable compression engine designs from, back in the 30s and 40s. But it just wasn't technically feasible. And no, I'm not that old. So just to put that out there for the record. But.
Were you referring to the old 468?
Anyway, I'm gonna let you guys get on. I know you got quite a bit you want to share with your audience, so I'm gonna sit around for a little bit. But this is my last night in town before I have to get on an airplane, and I do have a lovely wife I need to spend some time with. So if you see me now off, no reflection on you guys. This is my one to make sure. Happy wife, happy life. I gotta make sure I keep that.
I gotta learn that.
Me too.
All right, Pete, thank you very much for coming on.
Yeah,
Really
Pete, thanks.
And thanks for early on. You're right. There was you publicly showed some appreciation for what we were doing, and we really appreciate that.
All righty. Okay, I guess we're done. We're going to go now, right? Is it my turn?
I don't know. Brian has the agenda. So.
Okay. Well, actually,
Chris.
Chris RoboCop had a question.
Yes.
In the chat. Yeah, you want me to read it?
Yes. Please.
Open question. How do you maintain a passion to teach others in an industry where it is hard enough to find time to train yourselves?
Oh, how do you find passion to teach others in an industry where it's hard enough? It's not hard to find the passion to teach others. It's hard to find the time to prepare to teach others because you're so overwhelmed.
I think the answer was in the question.
Yeah.
Passion.
Yeah, you have to have that passion to actually want to teach others. And then once you have that passion for that one thing, if that's your goal, and you're headstrong enough to keep going for it, it just all kind of falls into play.
I find it equally difficult to find an individual, for lack of a better term, worthy of the training. Someone who wants to learn themselves.
Well, sometimes I feel that's accurate. I do think that's accurate, Keith. But what I think happens is that you have people that have this guard, like this man guard, that they don't want to make themselves vulnerable, so they want to act like they know stuff. And so I think that there's probably more people out there that are good candidates for helping than you would think because of that guard, is my opinion.
Oh, you also get the ones that just don't care. They're there to collect a paycheck wherever they're at.
Right, and that's what I talk about, is that there's not a lot of individuals that are willing to help themselves, so I'm not going to spend time to help them.
Can I jump in on that one real quick?
Yeah, absolutely.
For a long time, I would hear guys say that, you know, and I've been, and I'll give you a good example. The major chain that I worked at, CarQuest approached them because they had their circuit rider out, and they asked to use that facility. And he said, well, if we use your facility, then your guys can come to our training for free. And we had probably 30, 40 techs on duty at that facility. You know how many came to training every month?
One.
Two. Yeah, but you know what? Most of the guys, they were making a good living doing the easy stuff, the gravy work. So they didn't see the need. If they had a diagnostic issue that was going to take them more than 15 minutes to deal with, they ship it to a dealer or pan it up to guys like me, you know, that didn't mind investing the time into it. Probably one of my faults. But I think I had an epiphany about this a few years ago. I'm not going to blame all the techs. Look at the shop owners.
Absolutely.
Shop owners have to create that culture of learning in their facility. They have to create that culture where education or continuing education is a requirement for employment. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. As an industry, we've killed that drive.
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of shop owners have done exactly that, and you guys have seen that firsthand. When you go to a national event and you see a shop owner that closes the shop for 3 days and takes his staff to an event like Vision or Auto Mechanic or whatever, they are out there and they're increasing. If you look at the buildup in anybody's training program now, I think what I just see the other day that I can't remember the company, I just saw their press release, but they're investing over $1 million into a brand new training facility. And that's the company that hasn't even entered the fray yet. I mean, look at the money that Federal Mogul has put into their programs. The CTI and WorldPac, Napa, they've all been around for quite a while and expanding. You know what I mean? So you're seeing that shift change, which I'm really excited to see. But it's only because the technology has kind of forced us into that position, right? If you can't, we used to say, and we said this when electronic ignitions first came out, these guys are not going to get trained, and they're just going to keep doing shoddy work, and they'll be out of business in a year. And you know what? 30 years later, they're still in business. You know what I mean? Because I guess they keep getting that constant flow of customers in there. So that's not going to put them out. But that's going to open up to a whole other topic there.
Well, I could get on
that
the
won't touch
soapbox.
that.
And I'll try to get brief, but there's so many resources like AMI, Automotive Management Institute, and CARM Show, and there's so many resources for shop owners. But you sit in shops and you hear the same thing. I can't get my guys dedicated. And you look around, it's a freaking dungeon. There's no lights. In some cases, like in Keith's neck of the woods, there's no roof on, right? There's no roof on the dang base. Like, and you wonder why people aren't dedicated to their career. I don't know. So let's move on. I could go on for days.
but to be fair, I've talked to a couple of people and spoke with whatever to a couple of people in Staten Island, and that's its own separate world over there. Those are different rules.
Yeah.
Same here.
Well, I mean, poor conditions are everywhere in this industry, unfortunately, and we got to get better about it, So I agree with you, Pete. We can't, the guys that aren't dedicated, we have to give them a reason to be.
Well, I think that, like I said, that when I saw, I have always believed that in my heart. I've always believed that. I've always said that there are the top 10% of our industry, and those are the ones you see at all the training events all around the country. These are the sharp guys, you guys, who understand and get the diagnostics and can handle these systems. And then you've got the bottom 15%, and I think that's probably being optimistic, that I wouldn't let them change the oil on my lawnmower. And I think they need to be run out of the business on a rail. In fact, I have a recent column in our magazine that I've already caught some heat for, but then there's the group in the middle, that 60, 70% in the middle that we saw at Auto Mechanic in the first year, that know they want to be better, that really do want to improve and are just as excited to get training as anybody you've ever seen. But again, they don't have the resources, they can't afford to go to some of these events, and they don't have the support from their shop owners to do so.
Well, that's why. Well, like we've been noticing lately. I mean, training, the attendance in events does seem to be growing. There seems to be more awareness, more people that are wanting to train, and
Show them the value. I think you show them the value, right?
exactly, and that's what we're all about. Because, like, we all caught the bug. I would like everybody to catch that bug, because if everybody educates themselves, how can you lose?
Yeah. Well, that's what you see too in the social media. And look at the number of Facebook groups alone that are automotive related that guys are active in and growing. You know, and you see a lot of good guys that are making comments in there, but probably haven't seen the vast majority of them at any national event per se. They may go to the Napa class and the CTI class at home, you know, but they haven't made that big jump yet into the pool to see guys like we've talked about all this time. You know, the Bernie Thompsons, the George Mitchell's, the John Thorntons.
Oh,
And then you have guys that are out there like we have a mutual friend in Eric O, who are out there doing it on YouTube and, you know, pushing out to 250,000 people in one shot. You know, mentioning some of the training, where it's going to be, and, you know, and even when even sometimes just scrolling through YouTube comments, you go down there and say, well, you know, I have no training in this area, and it gives us the ability to, you know, contact some of the training companies and tell them, hey, you know, there's a gap here. And, you know, some of these companies have been very, very receptive to that and saying, you're right. Well, we didn't know we had people out there looking. And so it's a good thing.
Well, how many times, and that's one of the things I brought to the forefront when I started with the magazine was like, if you get the magazine in the mail and you're the shop owner, where's it end up? Sits on your desk, right?
Yep.
So it doesn't always get to the back of the shop, you know. Same thing with those kind of announcements. You know, the boss tosses it onto his desk. He doesn't give it a second thought because in his mind, right, he doesn't have that culture of or the season need education. I think that's another, like I said earlier, I think that's the thing that we really need to keep hammering on. You know, hey guys, if you want your shop to get even better, you want to put more money in the bottom line, then you got to help your technicians put more in their pocket, and this is how you do it.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what's great about social media stuff, because you can bypass the boss and go right to the tech.
That's it.
And then you could bypass the boss, go right to the tech, and then get them involved.
All right, let's talk about this post. This is a few months old, but it's a good one, right?
Yeah.
Oh no, this is actually 13 days old.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
The
So let me go do this. So this is a post on Diagnostic Network. We figured we'd give it a shot because it is actually, it's a great resource for techs like us and everybody just to get through and talk to one another with. But there's a post on here from Michael Christopherson. How do you say that?
you said it right, Christopherson.
Christopherson. Yeah. It's half my name. So I figure I'll just read and we'll just talk about it. And if you guys got any questions, we'll go from there. All right. So he goes, I was called to check out a 2008 Acadia that had a constant PO449 code. The customer had changed the vent solenoid without any result. In testing, we found that there was an open between the valve and the PCM. Wiring diagrams are my hero! ! My idea was to jumper the wire and see if we could get the vent valve.
Wait a minute. Instead of saying exclamation point, I'd like you to redo that and just make it sound like you're excited.
Wait, hold on, wait. Wiring diagrams are my hero!
There you go.
Okay. I went over the process several times. I discovered that when we were looking through the wires to I missed him. Oh, here we go. My idea was to jumper the wire to see if we could get the vent valve to work. In the process, we fried the PCM. Well, damn. I went over the process several times. I discovered that when we were looking through the wires to find the correct one, the back probe, two of the main connectors were not securely seated to the PCM. The theory is that when the vent valve was commanded on, the ground took whatever path it could, since the prescribed path was not connected. Pop goes the weasel. No exclamation point there.
There should have been one there. So
there should have been something.
Reread that.
All right. Pop goes the weasel. Today, we installed and programmed a used PCM. We got to the same point of testing. We got to the same point of testing. I was concerned about letting the smoke out of another PCM. We wired the vent solenoid through my multimeter. This way, we could watch the current flow at the same time, and at the same time pull the plug if needed. Maybe it would pop the fuse in my meter.
I'm Ron Burgundy.
The jumper wire works fine. We were able to command the vent on and off. The code cleared without a hitch. I'm really glad the PCM was only $40. A $40 PCM. Okay, go on. I'm also glad that when we got one, it was not from a global A vehicle. When they're done that, lesson learned. Check the connection before loading the circuit. And he shows a picture of the ground there. Can I make it any bigger? Not really. Maybe. There we go. That's a big ass ground, huh? And that was pretty much it.
Yeah, that's common in them PCMs.
Well, if you look, the thing I like about it is the title. The title's
Like
great.
chicken and fried bacon, not a fried PCM. First of all, a $40 PCM, I'll fry them all day long.
for fun.
Just for fun. I mean, $40. I mean,
Just to be clear, too, when you see that PCM, that is a PCM that you're not going to be swapping in a used one just willy-nilly.
go
that
on,
one-
Keith.
That's why he mentioned the not global A vehicle.
That
Yeah,
one's
this-
not global. Right?
This one's not global A. 2010 was the first domestic, right? 2010
and
was
that
the
was
first
the
year.
Buick LaCrosse, Cadillac SRX, and
And a
something else.
Camaro.
Mm,
Yeah.
Camaro.
Man, Keith. I saw your eyes roll back in your head. You like you access some deep
Yeah.
files back there.
He's a
That was
straight. Keith is a straight nerd, man. He's like a Wikipedia nerd database.
He has a flash drive plugged into the back of his head.
I
I saw-
upgraded to solid state. It's now just a
Too-
hyper STD.
Too bad it's full of Guinness.
Yeah, sloshing around in there.
And that's pin 73, by the way.
Yep,
in 73.
yep.
So who's seen this before?
On both plugs, X1 and X2. Only
X-
X1, it's the
So,
Yep.
in your
X2 and
case,
X3.
for those of you who've seen it before, was the connector not down? Was it not seated properly?
I've never tested it with more than one connector off. I always just have the one and check.
By the
Yeah.
time it came to me, the vehicle didn't run, so they'd already played with it. So that came from a used car dealer.
The smoke was already out.
Yeah,
Did you put some smoke back in it just to see?
So what you're saying is these are, they're like me. They're a bit sensitive.
I've seen that pin melt out of there on a few of them.
But like you, Bryn, it looks like it's a good cuddler.
Hey.
I don't know, man. They could leave some marks on your face. Those heat sink
haven't-
marks.
I had an earlier Equinox, non-global A one, where the PCM sits on top of the battery.
Mhm.
Shop left the cover off, and PCM was flying around in there. And then it just they were on a test drive where it failed. They towed it back to their shop. They slapped the PCM in it. Their tech said it needed programming. It got shipped to me. Of course, when I got to it, it wouldn't talk. I'm like, okay. So I called him. I'm like, hey man, this thing isn't talking. He's like, I know, that's why I want you to replace it. I'm like, well, I can't program it if it can't talk. And he's like, oh well, fix it. Tell me how much it is. So this is the quickest diag I ever did because my power probe, the little ground on it, my power probe 3, actually accidentally touched the PCM. And when that happened, like I heard the throttle body go on and off. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I just took the connect that I depinned the connector and the ground wire was fried all the way up to the block.
Now what would you think causes all that?
Well, it touched the positive lead on the battery,
Oh yeah.
but it didn't fry enough to burn the PCM. It just burned the ground wire, so it wasn't grounded.
Well, damn.
Yeah, that was pretty interesting.
That's pretty cool.
I had one similar to that. I had somebody tow me a second gen Prius that it was a car lot. They had their son rebuild this battery in the car.
Were they all backwards?
And he's like, oh, it's fine. We took the service plug out. I'm like, okay, yeah. Anyways, it wouldn't ready up because it wasn't bolted to the vehicle. So it did the relays. They ground through the chassis, the battery bolts to the battery. Kind of simple. Well, that's pretty cool. This guy, by the way, if you guys aren't familiar with Diagnostic Network, it's pretty self-explanatory based by the title alone. Demographic is really diagnostic technicians or technicians that are interested in diagnosing. that this gentleman here, Michael Christopherson, impressive guy. I don't know when he has time. The other day I responded to one of his posts that pretty sure he doesn't sleep, but we definitely benefit from the fact that he doesn't sleep. So he's pretty cool to follow on there.
Yeah, if you guys haven't been on Diagnostic Network, you really should get on because there's really good stuff. And it's honestly, as more and more of us go on there and share our stuff, it just becomes even better. Ooh, somebody's looking to buy an engine table lift. Brian, sell your engine table lift.
I will.
I got dibs on that.
To answer a few questions, there are 3 $35 PCMs and like 20 $50 PCMs on part in Oklahoma for that.
Oh yeah.
So they are that inexpensive used.
Nice. That never happens to me. Usually when I break something, it's like $1,000.
Yeah.
I broke.
It's an epic break.
You know the A-pillar trim piece? When you get the door panel, it's got this little tweeter in it most of the time. Hyundai, I broke that piece. That was $300.
Oh my goodness.
How much a trim, A-pillar trim? Like it should be $18. But they sell it with a speaker and it's $300.
Yeah, and the bad thing about Hyundai and Kia parts is they are very hard to get. It usually takes several days to get anything. Even a TPMS sensor for them, it takes a few days.
Can we settle this right now? Is it Hyundai or Hyundai?
I say Hyundai just because it reminds me how to spell it.
Oh God!
You know what a Hyundai is? It's called a Reggie.
I've just.
Oh God!
Speaking of Hyundai, I have my case study, and that's on a Hyundai.
Oh, let's do that. So I'm gonna stop sharing.
Go to
Brian, it's all you.
All right. All right, mine, it's pretty simple diag, I guess, but I've never seen it before. We had a car come in for a intermittent no crank. The car would click. Very easy diag. The tech that was working on it, he diagnosed it, and it needed a starter. So we had ordered the starter. The starter was put in, and he gets done, and he goes ahead and tries to start the vehicle, and now it clicks every time. A very, very loud click.
Look into my eyes, Brian. Look into my eyes.
So he comes over to me and asks me, "Hey, can you help me look at this?" Because
he's staring into my soul. Hold on.
Never mind.
Look away.
Anyway,
sorry, go on. Sorry.
He comes over to me and asking me to help him, and so I go over there and I do all the tests with him. I do the voltage drop of the battery wire, the ground, making sure trigger's present. I go through all the steps, don't miss any, and I noticed when you were trying to crank this thing that you could hear the amperage flowing. It was heavy. The battery voltage was dropping down to 6 volts. It was a very like dead short type of draw. So I told him that starter's probably bad. Let's go ahead and pull it out. And we pull it out. We order another starter. We put it in. Same exact thing happens again. So now it's my turn to cover my butt to see what I messed up on. And I go through the same thing. I actually pull the starter out. I put it on a bench, and I bench test the starter. The starter works just fine. So I'm looking at it. I can't see anything wrong with this thing. The Bendix gear comes out. Everything looks perfect. And I ended up finding the original starter that was in the box and comparing them next to each other. Couldn't find anything different. Looking at them, and eventually I looked down at the starter and I noticed, let me share my screen here. I noticed that the Bendix gear on the new starter has 9 teeth. If you count these teeth on here, there's 9. And if you go to the original one, there's actually 10 teeth. So the only difference of that starter was the gear. So the gear was coming out, it was banging into the face of the flywheel and not spinning at all. I've never seen that before, and I thought it was pretty interesting, so I thought I'd share it with you guys.
Where was that starter from?
That was a brand new TYC brand starter. The listing at the parts house, there was only one listing. There was, I ended up using a different vendor. That vendor only had a reman starter, and we got that, and that starter ended up having the correct gear in it. So,
So the lesson
Yeah.
here is don't buy new.
yeah, I figured the new starter would be better, but apparently it's built with the wrong Bendix gear. So, just something
That's a-
I thought
that's a-
I'd share.
It is probably the best case scenario that it didn't actually engage the flywheel and turn it.
Yeah, I was expecting when I finally
Carnage.
realized what it was. I was expecting I would have thought that the front of the gear would have ground into the flywheel and made a big
It
mess.
looks like it's too big to do so. Like if it were smaller, then you would be looking at R&R in a transmission, maybe.
Yeah, yeah.
Is
Yeah.
it killing? Do you know where that gear came from? Is it killing you that you don't know if you don't? It would kill me. Then.
Model. I mean, I don't know.
Manual versus automatic. What kind of car was it?
It was a Hyundai Entourage minivan.
Oh, they don't have a manual
Well,
in those. Do they?
That's a 6-speed Triptronic. You don't even know, man. That's crazy.
So
It's got nitrous on it. It's got wheelie bars because it's front wheel drive and awesome. It's got chrome fender flares. Every single add-on you can get at the auto parts store.
Yeah, all of aisle 8 AutoZone is stuck to it.
You got that by you, Keith?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so much. All the fake plastic hood scoops. Those are my favorite.
Yeah. I get the big hood scoop and then put the small hood scoop on top of it. My hood scoop has a hood scoop.
double scoop.
You
Everybody
remember,
likes scoop.
you remember spinner hubcaps?
Oh yeah.
Oh, those are the
Put a
best.
little weight on one of them so it doesn't spin. It looks cooler.
Okay. All right. So what else is on the agenda?
We have Bryn's case study.
All right, first, let me talk about something before I forget, if you guys don't mind.
Fine.
We like to take the opportunity to make sure that you guys are knowing, you're in the know, or know about any training events that are taking place. We have, interestingly enough, 2 ADAS classes.
Dos a dos.
Dos ADAS.
Dos pedas, por favor.
That's fine.
Let's see here. Does anybody have those screenshots of them? I think I may have them. Should I share my?
Sheriff, we got it. I don't have it, but I
Yeah.
can find it.
You asked me to do work. This is not cool.
I have.
Huh.
I mean,
I think I have
Facebook
them. Hold on.
pages.
Yeah, that's all. Okay, you got it.
Yeah, I have it up.
How do I share? Oh, okay. Well, post the next one's June 22nd, which is this weekend.
Right.
Oh.
June 22nd is the ADAS Exploration 3 hands-on ADAS training, and that's at
Yep.
Mobile Tech in
In
Wilmington, North Carolina.
Can we
Yeah.
click on Isaac's screen his profile pic?
That is a fantastic profile picture.
That is one sexy dude. Look at him. Damn. He cleaned himself up.
Yeah, he
Looks
did.
like a pharmaceutical spokesperson.
There we go.
Like he wants to
Look
sell.
at that $1 million smile.
That is fantastic.
Hold on. I can't draw pictures on it. Hold on, wait. I wanted to
That's
draw.
That is June 22nd. Yeah, and the 23rd.
June 22nd, 23rd. This is David Friend's shop, and it's David Friend and Isaac's Rodell, isn't it?
Yes,
Not Rodell.
technically
Sir.
it's Rodell. Yeah,
Yeah, we're calling it Road Diesel though.
yeah. 5929 Market Street.
Look it up. Where can they find it, guys?
It's right there. Right, follow the dot.
Just show up.
You're not sharing the correct part of the screen. But
Oh,
Yeah,
not?
don't confuse that with the dot above your house. That's just the dot.
Oh, is it still not showing the?
all I see is your L1 logo.
Oh,
No, I
that's
see it.
Interesting.
I see it. I see the map.
Oh no, YouTube sees the logo.
Uh,
What?
On,
All right. I don't know how that happens.
Skynet.
dude, did they see? Are they going to see the case studies and stuff?
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
It's just my jankiness because I opened up a separate window, so it moved away. They
Do
can
we
see-
not like?
They should be able to
do-
see what's on my screen now.
Give it 40
Not
seconds. We'll
sharing
find out.
that.
Yeah.
Let
there's
me.
a-
Have we had any like interaction? Is anybody paying attention
Yep.
to the
Yep.
chats?
Yep.
Oh,
Give it a
nobody's here.
second.
We're talking to ourselves.
I'm watching it. give it a second. See if it pops up.
Bryn,
Correct.
Bryn, you can take your shirt off. We're good.
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Anyways, so as long as I don't click the map, we're gonna be okay.
So
Okay.
yeah, it's right
So-
there. Look at that dot.
This is the third one they've done, hence the name Auto ADAS Exploration 3. But heard really good things about the first one. I don't think I got feedback on the second one. I'm sure it was great. But yeah, it should be really good deal. David's got an amazing shop, and they do that's huge number of volume is huge there. So
They can't see it. They can't. Yeah, they can't see it.
I know.
You can't share. Somebody else has to share.
Yeah, it must be. Because I'm dual monitoring it. And I'm trying to.
okay. Well,
X-Men,
let me take over for the next one.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Let me get off.
So
here.
trust us. There's an ADOS class.
Yeah, I swear we're not making it up.
You guys didn't want to go anyway.
Listen, if you're on Facebook groups, if you're following us, you probably are. It's you'll if you haven't seen them already, you'll see them. But it's Mobile Tech is the name of the shop. You can look them up there in Wilmington. Reach out to them if you have any interest in the class. Let's see. Let me share here.
I finally got it to pop up, but
What do I share? Post attendee. What do I got different windows here. Just screen, right?
Do you have
Yeah.
Mace Windows?
Okay. Is it showing up?
no, it's not sharing anything right now.
Great. Okay.
There
How
we go.
about now?
There you
There you
go.
go. Perfect.
So there we are. This is a friend of mine, is a friend of ours as well, Mike Reynolds. He's done some really cool stuff. He as well does high volume with ADAS stuff, and he's in Charleston, South Carolina, and he's doing. I believe this one's a one-day thing. June, it says there July 27th, and should be really good. He's actually shared this PowerPoint with me months ago. And I thought it was awesome what he's put together. And he has some really cool, I don't know. I don't want to get into it, but there's quite a bit of debate with, aftermarket versus OE. And I really appreciate Mike's perspective. I think he's, I don't know. I really appreciate his perspective. It doesn't feel like there's some kind of agenda there. It just feels like it's honest and, but he shared, like I said, he shared his PowerPoint with me, and it's an amazing class. Definitely recommend looking into going. This is a hot topic, for sure. So look into that as well. Again, where to find it? If you're not on the Facebook groups, like where do they find it? Hit me up, and I'll point you in the right direction. If you're a Facebook friend, or just email us. I think. Do we have it on the website, Brian? Both of these classes.
No, but I can do that.
They
Okay.
can go on the website.
Yeah, go to trainbytext.com and the events tab, and Brian will have both of these up. The last one I'll touch on real quick, which unfortunately, I don't have the screen capture on it, or the date. Hopefully somebody else can help me out, but is the BMW classes that are coming up. I think they're in the Carolinas as well.
Are those
Yeah.
Seth classes?
Yes.
That's always a good time.
Oh yeah.
I think it's two different classes.
That's right. They're both through SSF.
One's like it's a scope class for BMW techs, and the other one is what's the other one?
I thought it was a transmission class or something. I'm looking.
You're asking lots of questions right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh. I guess I can stop sharing. How do I stop sharing? Stop share.
I'm trying to find it because they have a lot of classes. They have one in October. They've got.
I think it's July. Sometime in July. Let me see. Brian.
Yeah.
Can I put more on your shoulders and just to ask you to find that and put that on the website? That way they can just know where to go to see it.
Absolutely.
All right, cool.
Hey Brian, there's a class somewhere about some stuff. Some dudes doing it, and
Just figure it out, Brian.
yeah. Just throw that on the website. Chop. Thanks. We're all waiting.
Chris Martino, when is your class, buddy?
I don't know what you're talking about. If you're over in Southern California this Saturday and you want to watch me embarrass myself, I'll be teaching my first World Pack
Oh,
class.
stop it. What is it? Volkswagen? Audi?
Volkswagen, Audi, body, and bus. Body electrics. Basically, a body the
Big bodies.
body electronics one. Yeah.
Like
Dude, that's-
Volkswagen bus or
Oh yeah. It's all kinds of stuff. It's on track diagrams versus regular diagrams, and it's soup to nuts how to diagnose the car really without even turning any wrenches, which is kind of cool.
Newsflash: track diagrams are way better.
Track diagrams used correctly are honestly way better. Which is you'll get that out of the class. You'll realize what they were going for and how they were poorly implemented in service information.
Is this wire hot all the time or just sometimes? I don't know. Does it say 30 or 15?
Exactly. you learn all the secret magic. Stop letting all my stuff out.
Like, he's giving him a taste. He's giving him a taste.
Yeah.
What city are you gonna be in, Chris? Somebody's asking.
What's it?
Huntington Beach.
No,
right?
that's actually no. I'm going to be flying into Huntington Beach, but it is going to be in Torrance.
Yeah. Nobody actually knows where Huntington Beach is, but
It's apparently there's a beach somewhere. There's a beach.
there's a beach in California?
Yeah, believe it or not,
Gosh, that's a big state.
it's a large state.
All right, cool. So Brian's going to have these things, a couple ADAS classes in the Carolinas. Chris Martino's sounds like an awesome class, man. Body on the chassis, electrical stuff. That's good stuff. That's going to be this Saturday in some random city.
Some random town in some random state. Don't trust me, you're not missing anything.
The only one that doesn't start with San, whatever town, the only town that doesn't start with San in California, Southern California.
It's a very religious state, Bryn.
This guy, and then the BMW classes. So very cool.
yeah.
Next live stream, by the way, we're gonna have a guest on, and we're gonna talk about some events, right, guys?
Oh yeah.
Cool. Real quick, we love giving shout outs to some really cool ideas. Pedro de la Torre. I'm gonna say it like a white guy. I'm not gonna try to say it like. I'm not even gonna try since I got made fun of last time.
Yeah.
He worked with AES Wave and developed a pretty sweet deal. This is a test lead. To be honest, I don't know that they're selling it yet, so don't. Hopefully, they're not too mad at me for showing you. But if you can see it, this is mostly for Snap-on scope users. Well, it is for Snap-on scope users. So if you're very familiar with Snap-on, if you're familiar with Snap-on and other scopes, Snap-on's a good scope, but there's some limitations. One being that you can't really zoom, you can't manipulate a capture very well. So if you have, which crap, I don't have my, I guess I could probably find it. If you have like a capture and you're wanting to see the whole thing, like a bird, like you're wanting to take up the real estate of the scope screen, with a Pico or in some other scopes, you can do that, and then you can zoom in on some of the smaller detail. Well, with Snap-on, it's really difficult. It's really impossible. So what he's done is he's created this lead, and what it does is take an input, one single input, and it allows you, which would be this BNC. An example would be a WPS 500. Of course, you'd have a BNC to BNC, and you take that. That's one input. Another input is this. So if you have a banana input, you could use that. It takes one input and allows you to put it at two different channels. So with a Snap-on, being that you can't zoom in on a capture, you can have one channel showing like a bird's eye view, if you will, like the full capture. One example, one of the best examples I think so far that I've heard and used myself is.
I got your image here.
There you go. The gold trace or yellow trace, there is an in-cylinder capture showing the whole waveform, which is great. But you may want to zoom in a little tighter and look at the detail of the exhaust valve opening and the intake valve closing event. So you can't really do that with a Pico. You can't manipulate it. But with this splitter, as you can see, I have the same signal going into two channels. For the second channel, the green trace there, I've got a different scaling so that I can look at more of the detail in the exhaust valve open, the detail at the bottom section of that waveform. So I think that's pretty awesome. AES Wave is going to be moving forward with this, it sounds like, and this should be available to you pretty soon, I would think. But this is just one of those things. It's like, oh man, that was It's pretty simple. Why didn't I think of that kind of thing? And just got to give credit where credit's due. I think it's a pretty cool idea.
Where did Chris go? Potty break?
I don't know.
All right.
Is that everything we've got? I think that's everything on the agenda.
No, we got Bryn's case study if he wants to do it.
It's up to you guys. We're 11 past the hour.
Yeah, we could wrap it up here.
Let's leave it up to the crowd here.
Yeah.
Yay or nay? You want to do a case study? See if
Now we
get some
wait 40
feedback.
seconds because of the lag.
do, 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 do.
So did I miss everything?
We're
Just
leaving. We're 11 minutes past the hour, so we're asking everybody who's in the chat if they want to see a case study or if they want to call it a day.
Oh,
Cliff says that's going to be out of stock soon.
Oh.
Got 2 yes, 3 yes, 4, 5.
And another one.
And we got yes.
And another
All right.
one.
well, here's a problem. I'm not seeing enough thumbs ups to get anything going right now.
Yeah, the problem is we say thumbs up and they give the emoji. We mean the thumbs up at the bottom of the screen.
Powered by thumbs ups.
Yes.
We have no
Actual
thumbs
YouTube
down.
thumbs up.
We don't have any thumbs down, so it's not officially it.
Yeah,
Well,
well,
it'll happen.
give it some time.
Not that I'm asking for that.
All right, I guess we're going to have to.
Case study it is.
Rob would like to buy a vowel.
It's the wrong game show. Wrong game show, man. All right, Brian.
It's all you.
Let's do it.
Oh.
Okay,
Yo,
so we have a. I won't say it. It's not.
Basura.
We have a Suzuki Grand Vitara 2006 2.7 liter. Customer concern was they had a hard time keeping it running, and it was also a no crank. When it did run, it ran rough. Go ahead. This was diagnosed, by the way, in June of last year. So I guess about 1 year ago. So the vehicle was towed in. Difficult to keep running. There was lots of warning lights illuminated when trying to start the vehicle, but the lights would sometimes extinguish when the vehicle started. He did do some of his own testing, and he felt like the battery was no good, but the charging system was functional.
He felt that way inside.
By the way, go back one slide. I just want you to know that's a blurry, crazy picture right there. But that is representative of the devil's in the details. So, I don't know.
I thought we were going to expel some demons out of this car.
I thought I saw that movie. That was in that movie with Johnny Depp.
Is there a movie, Devil's in the Details?
No, it's the Ninth Gate or something like that.
Oh,
That's what it looks like. Okay, moving on.
So when the vehicle was brought in, the battery was dead. We were able to jump start the vehicle and get it running. Check engine light was on. The traction and control light was flashing. And of course, you guys have felt this pain point with me. The fuel gauge was on E and the fuel light was on.
It needs gas.
customer states it only shakes at 50 miles per hour.
So we replaced the battery, puts 5 gallons of fuel in it, the client's approval. And then, of course, we want to kind of just mention that it's important if you have enough power to go in and kind of see what you have as far as fault code and freeze frame data to definitely take a look. But regardless, in this case, well, it's good practice to try to maintain battery voltage when changing a battery anyway. So we did so, and following screen should be, let's see if I can follow along over here. All right, moving on. There's several screens we're just kind of jam through here. This is basically good practice. Again, if you're looking at diagnosing any modern vehicle, you need to be looking at the fault codes in every module. If you do not have a scan tool that's not capable of this, it should be on the wish list for sure. So that's what we did here, and there's going to be a lot of screens here. So go ahead and, in this case, first one is engine controller, and we're going to kind of try to jam through it pretty quickly. But the P1603 is, let me follow along here. The P1603 is a fault code, of course, in an engine controller. The TCM is sending a message that it can't compute ECM messages, so it could be like a CAN communication issue. The 2102 and the 2101, I'm going to kind of go through these and tell you, well, first of all, I guess I'd like it with the delay. It's kind of a bummer. I'd like to get viewer engagement, but I guess instead I'll ask you guys to help me out with some of these screens. In this right here in the engine controller, based off the symptoms here, do you think that we need to investigate these, or do these give us diagnostic direction, in your opinion? We can't wait 40 seconds. I need you guys to help.
I'm going to say no.
I mean, that's a big deal, right? Like when you get a car, by the way, there's 10 screens here. When you get a car with a lot of fault codes and you're faced with trying to pinpoint like a main concern, it can be difficult to kind of sift through these and decide which ones are going to be ones to focus on, right? Which ones offer diagnostic direction. Would you guys agree? It can be sometimes. So let's kind of work through this. I think personally, certainly you don't want to like purge it. You want to keep these things in mind, but my opinion is consider these, but don't chase them right now. Move on to the next one. So the transmission code, the 1703 is very similar to 1603. It sounds like basically they're having a difficulty kind of talking back and forth. Analog brakes at 1075, steering angle, sensor calibration, and then, well, let's say real quick, anything, do we dive into these? Do we chase them, or do we just consider them? Any relevance to our main concern, or cause or symptom? Like, are these, do we think we need to chase these? Are these potentially a cause of our problem, or are they a symptom of our problem? Or are they not related?
Probably more of a battery issue.
So I tend to agree, especially on the steering angle sensor calibration, but potentially on the stuff that looks like maybe communication codes.
Yeah,
So
low voltage.
Yeah. So let's move on. Analog brakes here. We have four-wheel drive control, module data and CAN line failure, and then we have wheel speed encoder failures and a yaw rate G sensor. Again, consider or chase.
Consider it, move on.
I agree. I think the yaw rate G sensor is probably definitely battery voltage related. The wheel speed sensor encoder, may not be, but it certainly shouldn't be related. At least it wouldn't be on my top of the list for our concern. So let's move on. Also under ABS, we have control module power supply. Of course, that's going to be a battery voltage concern, so it's not going to be something we're going to focus on. ECM data and CAN line failure, again. Airbag, we have sensor mat fault, occupant classification, pressure sensor fault, left side airbag high resistance. What do you guys think about the airbag codes?
Back of my head. Moving on.
Yeah, moving on. Doesn't seem related. I don't know that they're communication or low voltage issues or not, but certainly not related to the drivability concern we're faced with diagnosis. So moving on. More airbag codes.
Checksum error is not good.
Checksum error is not good. But all of these, would you agree that most of these may need investigating?
Oh, at some point, yeah, but probably not for our drivability concern.
Right. And that's kind of where I'm getting. And I'm hoping that even though it seems a little bit much to go through these one by one, that some of us, maybe there's somebody out there that has struggles with this, because this, especially for early techs, when you get a car that comes in, it can be difficult to sift through these and just make a decision on whether to, go after something. So again, nothing here that I think is going to help us out. Moving on. Body control module communication bus off, loss of communication with ECM, loss of communication with TCM, loss of communication with keyless start control module. Certainly, possibly things we have to consider, but not related to our drivability concern. Maybe battery voltage issues.
Yeah, considering we're pulling data from BCM, ECM, and TCM already. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Four-wheel drive module, transfer switch, control module communication, loss communication, same deal.
I'll say history code as well, so.
Yeah. Let's see. Okay. Another one which just didn't show up under there for loss communication with ABS, and then heating and air conditioning, sun load sensor and or circuit malfunction, and then heating air conditioning loss CAN communication issue again. I think it's safe to say that these are not really going to give us diagnostic direction. Certainly, a lot of these codes we may need to investigate, but a lot of them appear to be related to a battery voltage issue. All right.
If that's all we got, then I would go to the throttle body ones.
Throttle body ones, sure. That's something to consider. So this is a lot to sift through. Looks like we have some voltage concerns, maybe network communication concerns, but those would probably be a symptom of the voltage concerns. We've agreed there's not a lot of diagnostic directions here. Would you have a rough idle, Keith? What would you think on the throttle body codes? What would you think if your first thought is that a cause or a symptom of our concern, I guess, potentially?
If I have throttle response, again, like anyone watching, I have no idea about this case study.
Yeah, everybody's seen this for the first time.
Yeah, so just so anyone's thinking I've got some crazy hidden thing, I don't. I'm probably wrong because this has turned into a case study, so it's probably something off the beaten path. But I would think throttle body codes, range high and low, could easily be a symptom or the cause, but you would need to just check data. That's where I would go first, I think. I mean, if I'm seeing rough idle and if I can get, APP looks good and I'm seeing throttle response and throttle control based on what I'm seeing, then maybe it's just a symptom.
Absolutely. I mean, so for me, I agree with you. That seems like the most relevant. But early on, at least in my thought process, and it's different because I'm feeling seat of the pants here. You're not there to feel the car, but you have just a simple, like, rough running condition. Like, it feels like it may not be in fuel control, right? In my opinion at the time, I thought if anything, those are the most relevant, but they're probably a symptom of our issue, not necessarily going to give us a diagnostic direction. So we have 10 pages of fault codes here, right? A lot to sift through. Could be hard for some of those of us that, I mean, it was for me for a long time and still sometimes can be. I think over time you start to get a better feel for what will be helpful to you in your diagnostic process. But is there diagnostic direction in any of this, in your guys' opinion? Any of the fault codes that retrieved?
Just a code scan, no, but maybe freeze frame data would give us something.
Maybe freeze frame data would. So what do you guys think we should do at this point? So you're thinking look into freeze frame, see what's there?
Personally, me, I missed the beginning half of this because I was running around. Personally, what I do, and whether it's right or wrong, I record that, I erase, test drive, and then rescan.
Yeah, I would look at all that, look at freeze frame data first, then erase and see what comes back.
So I think we're all in agreement. Basically, it's very important, first of all, to do a code scan so that you're reading codes in every module. Even in this case, it doesn't appear that there's a lot of diagnostic direction here, but there very easily can be. Most of these systems on cars, they kind of they rely heavily on each other to function properly. I think most of us know that. So very important to get retrieve fault codes from every module. It's also very important to document them, like Chris said. So that's what we decided to do. We if you move on to the next screen, Ryan.
Hold on a second. Hold on. Who took this picture? That's a great picture.
That is a good picture. He took it himself, though, I could tell.
I remember that face.
Well, taken out of context, that can be pretty.
Were you in the bathroom? That's weird. What were you doing?
That's Bryn after he travels.
Constipation, Bryn.
Oh, I feel good when you wrote what I said.
So, document that stuff, and it's freeze frame too. But to reduce brain damage, don't take a quick glance, see if there's anything that in there that you think is going to give you diagnostic direction. Reach out to a buddy if you need help. Document the codes, clear the codes, and see what happens. Like you guys hit the nail. Is that the way they say it?
No, I hit hammers.
You hit hammers.
I generally hit thumbs with hammers.
Yeah. You ever seen the Simpsons movie? That's basically me.
So we're going to clear codes. Chris said he's going to test drive and see what happens. I'm going to clear codes, and this case, this. Oh, he said he had a SS solid state drive upgrade, so you'll get an answer quick. In this case, the symptom is when. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I probably did a poor job, but it's an rough idle. So it's pretty much you can. It's great because it's not intermittent. It's all the time. It's a rough idle.
Right.
So we cleared codes, and we're looking at next screen. We're going to look at some scan data. This should have some animations too. Oh, there you go. There was an animation there. There was no codes initially. Oh, weird, it went away. We did get a PO 101, but we'll get more on that later. Go ahead. So the symptom is present right now. It's when idling. This data is captured at idle. Do you guys see anything? Hopefully, maybe we can get some participation in the group, but again, 40 seconds is a hard, painful to wait that long. So give you guys a minute if you don't mind participating. So we're throttle sensor output voltage is 5, right? It's static. It's not moving around. So it's sitting there idling. It's nothing's happening there. I can't really see the screen. Let me minimize this. Definitely idle. Desired idle speed is pretty static as well. Mass airflow is minimum is 4.75, maximum is 5.21. Do you guys? Let me ask you again. Do you guys see anything here that sticks out to you?
Yeah, it's in fuel control, but it's got a 9% long-term.
Yeah, it's slightly elevated trims.
Yes, indicative of maybe a vacuum leak or its inability to idle itself. I mean, we don't see.
Am I seeing that wrong, or is that throttle position sensor stuck at 5 volts?
Yeah, I see that.
It does say voltage 5.
I need glasses, man. I can't see nothing.
But idle RPM 651, so.
Even with my phone.
What's interesting is that PID doesn't show min max, but it is static. It's pretty because it's not moving. It doesn't show min max. That is interesting. Let's move to the next slide.
What's more interesting is. Oh, never mind. Sorry. Go ahead. I just realized that was desired, not actual. Go ahead.
Yeah, that it didn't move. I saw the same thing.
Yeah, it was like 651 RPM and it didn't move.
Awesome idle.
Yeah, I gotta fix that then. I gotta fix that then. I gotta make sure I got RPM on there. That's my bad. So we have fuel trims you guys mentioned. We have a little bit elevated 9.4% long term. We're floating pretty close to short term at 0. What is the rule of thumb that we hear oftentimes, guys? First of all, when you're using fuel trims, guys, you need to be using total fuel trims, and which generally is going to be short term, long term, but a lot of modern cars will use rear fuel trim as well. And you have to add them together to see what the total adaptation is taking place. That's really where the diagnostic power is, in my opinion. But in this case, we have 9.4 long term and short terms floating around 0. What do we hear most of the time and have for years? What's a rule of thumb?
Oh, plus or minus 10. Is that what the number you're looking for?
Yeah, I mean that's. I think a lot of us have heard that, right?
Yeah.
For a long
Yep.
time.
Not all of us
And-
follow it, but all of us have heard it.
My experience is when you have a really tight running car, it's been closer. But from what I understand, as you get into some strategies have changed a lot in really modern cars.
Yes.
And sometimes you can see very normal, perfect running cars where fuel trims are a little kind of skirting the edge of what you would think is normal. But in this case, we have, I agree, long term is a bit elevated, close to 10%.
Just real quick on that, if anyone has an EcoBoost, just go monitor fuel trims and go drive that around. You'll see
That's the one that
you'll see like 18 to 22% plus or minus.
that's the one that comes to mind, and I don't know if it's all EcoBoost or not, but that's
1.6 for sure.
What about map sensor, manifold absolute pressure sensor? Actually, hit the button. You should have an animation come up. So we say marginal. Would you guys agree? Well, just one at a time.
No. Just
Back
blow
up.
through all of them. I'm trying to find a place to put your face, Bryn. It's not working very well.
What about map?
21's amazing, but I guess you're in.
Well, the scaling is pretty tight.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It may appear to be off, but that's the difference of 1.2 inches of mercury.
Yeah.
Total swing.
So let me ask you something. Would you guys agree that when you have map displayed, and it may be some slight difference in terminology, but it may not be obvious as well. When you have map displayed, would you agree that you have two different options as far as how they would display it?
Sure.
Usually. Yeah.
Yes.
And what would the options be?
KPA and
Voltage.
inches.
So
Usually
I don't mean like in that
You
way. I mean
absolute or yeah.
gauge or absolute is what I'm getting
Oh, yeah.
to.
Yeah.
No.
So is this gauge? And explain the difference, Keith. If anybody else wants to volunteer, explain the difference between gauge and absolute.
So when you think about a pressure gauge that you've got, think about the needle. Where does it set when it's just in open atmosphere? It's at 0, correct? So
Right.
at 0, we're at gauge pressure, which means we've zeroed for atmospheric for our 1 bar. So although there is 14.7 or 1 atmosphere of pressure on the gauge, we've calibrated it to be at 0. So when reading
Right.
absolute, if you're reading 0, you're actually at full 14.7 or 1 bar vacuum when you read absolute 0. So anytime
Right.
you read absolute and you're reading a 2 bar of pressure, or a full 20 inches of mercury, or whatever scaling you've got set up, your 99 kPa or whatever, you're actually reading your normal atmospheric vacuum on top of engine vacuum in the manifold.
Right. And that's what we have here. So for some of us may not know that anything about atmospheric pressure, and you alluded to it a moment ago. 14.7 is a pretty that's sea level, and I think
Yeah.
it's that's a pretty good rule of thumb that you're pretty close to that. And your PID that you would use to determine that, by the way, is Barrow PID, which is should be there. But a lot of us, some of us may not realize that you do have pressure at all times. Like it's not 0. It's 14.71 roughly at sea level. So like Keith was mentioning, you have gauge and you have absolute. In the case of absolute, it's not zeroing at atmospheric pressure. So it's counting in that 14.7, or in this case, that's PSI. And another kind of cool trick, which I've learned from John Thornton years ago, is it's really easy to convert to PSI to inches of mercury. It's just ×2. So for every pound per square inch, you have 2 inches of mercury. So if you have 14 point, approximately, it's close enough.
0.4987, but yeah.
It's close enough to where I've found it works for me.
Yeah.
So if you have 14.7 pounds at atmosphere, then you would generally have 29.4. So let's hit the next button, the animation to come up, Brian. So absolute pressure, you have Barrow, and this is, by the way, this is in Florida, and we can't get any closer to sea level.
Yeah.
So we have 29.4 inches of mercury is bare. That's what the atmospheric pressure is, 29.4 inches of mercury, roughly. Now you take that and you take our absolute measurement here, 29.4 minus 21.2, and we have in manifold pressure 8.2 inches of mercury. What do you guys think about that?
Not
That's
enough.
a little bit low.
Where should it be sea level on a and things change, by the way. I talked earlier about strategies changing. A lot of times, really, really modern cars, they're kicking the throttle blades open at idle to help reduce pumping losses. So when you're used to seeing those rule of thumb manifold vacuum levels, when you look at real modern cars, don't be super surprised if it's not, and don't assume that it's broken. But traditionally, historically speaking, what do we expect rule of thumb at sea level in the manifold at idle?
18 to 19.
Yeah, 18, 19.
Yeah, I mean that's 18 to, I'd say in our area it's
20.
probably close to 20. It's really
Yeah.
pretty close to 20 most of the time.
I'm at 600 foot above sea level, and I regularly see 18.8, 19.4,
Yeah. So we can agree that 8.2 inches of mercury
which is
probably
approximately 17.2. Correct.
broken.
Yes, probably
Right.
broken.
What could cause this? Which, by the way, an increase in manifold pressure, just a decrease in manifold vacuum. It depends on how you want to say it, but both mean the same thing. What could cause this thing to have 8.2 inches of mercury when we think it probably should have about 20 inches of mercury?
Well, that with our elevated long-term fuel trims taken at idle would indicate maybe a vacuum leak.
Certainly could. If you had enough of a vacuum leak to cause the manifold pressure to be 8.2 inches of mercury, would you expect fuel trims to be only 10% positive?
Oh no. I'm just giving the.
No. I'm not challenging. We're working through it for the audience.
Yeah, if I saw, I would normally see probably 15, 16, 18 or more positive fuel trim if we have a vacuum leak high enough to reduce manifold vacuum that far.
That's pretty substantial, isn't it?
Yep.
From where it should be. So what are some of the other things we should be looking at?
I think it was Chris that was writing on the screen.
Oh, I didn't see. I can't see anything.
Oh.
Exhaust restriction.
Yep, increased DGR flow, VVT strategies.
That would generally give you a rich trim, correct?
Right.
What?
An EGR.
Right.
Well, let's think about it. Why would it give you a rich trim? You also have to, which we probably did a poor job of here, guys. I'm sorry, but you have two different systems primarily to think about here. You have a mass airflow fuel strategy system, fuel management system, or you have a manifold absolute pressure
Oh.
Speed density.
Yep.
speed density. There you go. Some systems use a combination of both.
Yep.
A lot of mass airflow cars will use a MAP sensor.
Sometimes
as
just
well.
for barrel correction, though.
Yeah, it's. I think with every car, there's
Yeah.
potentially some authority change from one manufacturer to another with regard to fuel management or whatever. But you have to think about what faults you are considering and how that fault would react or affect a speed density system versus a manifold absolute pressure system.
Right, because the essentially weighted amount of command given due to barometric pressure or by map sensors is massive in comparison over a mass airflow car.
On most, yeah.
Yeah, most speed density systems.
So we're dealing with a mass airflow, which I think we can see in the scan data, manifold absolute pressure. We also see airflow rate in grams per second, which doesn't necessarily mean we have a mass airflow sensor, right guys?
It could easily be a calculated pit.
Some Chryslers have that, which I can't remember if if it's expressed that obviously in the scan data, but
Yes, it is. I think it's listed as airflow rate gram a second.
I'm just saying on a Chrysler, I can't remember if theirs makes it obvious that it's calculated in the scan data.
Oh, no. It makes it seem like there'd be a mass airflow sensor laying around somewhere.
This is a mass airflow system. So we talk about EGR being a possible cause. We talk about exhaust restriction being a possible cause. And Chris brought those up?
I think so. He was drawing on the screen.
No, Chris is not here.
Oh, was it you, Brian? Who was drawing on the screen?
Probably Keith.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I agree with those. How do
Yeah.
we? Why?
Well, if we have open EGR, we're going to decrease manifold vacuum.
There you go. Why does it? Why would it? Would it affect fuel trims?
It depends how it weights the map sensor at this particular drivability section.
There you go.
This metering block of time. Although it's
So-
a mass airflow car, if it's at idle, it may not weigh heavily on the mass airflow sensor because it's not nearly as accurate at idle.
So the authority,
Yeah.
you're saying potentially being given more to the map than the mass airflow,
Yeah.
is why you would have some fuel trimming.
Yeah. I'm not saying that. That is legitimately, that's not, I don't think that's the problem with this car. I'm just explaining it.
No doubt, no doubt. I'm just that's what I'm asking you to do is kind of walk
Yeah.
us through some ideas and why. So obviously we're running, quite a bit over, so I'll try to kind of shorten this. But with a mass airflow car, historically speaking, when you have something, we talked about exhaust restriction. When you have something that changes the flow coming in and out of air in and out of the engine, well, let's say reduces the flow. An exhaust restriction could reduce the flow, right? Well, your air mass, the biggest authority for fuel pulse width or injector on time, how much fuel is being sprayed in, is again historically based off the mass airflow sensor. So if the engine's going to read the mass airflow sensor and base how much fuel to spray, well, it's reading accurately that there's a reduction in air coming through that engine because of the restriction. So the amount of fuel that it sprays in is going to be right because it's reading that reduction in airflow coming through the engine. But the same thing happens to EGR for the most part. And again, don't take these rules don't apply to every strategy, but generally speaking, when you're dealing with a mass airflow system, when you have an EGR that's diluting the manifold pressure like we could have here, the authority still is to a large degree given to the mass airflow sensor. If that EGR is allowing an inert gases going into the manifold, then that is potentially going to reduce the amount of air coming through the actual mass airflow sensor. So it would make sense that it could be an EGR thing. It could be an engine mechanical thing, couldn't it?
Absolutely. You would have the same exact symptoms and scenarios.
Knowing me and that I'm a scope user, what do you think I'm going to do to try to verify engine mechanical?
Probably relative compression.
All right, let's move on to the next slide. So, did you guys see a problem? Of course, you jammed through my. We see.
Can't hear you, Bryn.
Do we see anything crazy obvious with this relative compression of cranking vacuum?
No, we have a slight repeatable, but nothing that I could see being a major concern.
Nothing conclusive.
Really quickly, the red trace in the bottom is starter current. We're using that to compare one cylinder to another to see if there's any that are lower, contributors mechanically. Low compression, basically, we can see what you want to look for is that they're pretty even. In this case, there's not perfect, but they're pretty even. Usually when you have some kind of fault, it's more obvious, for sure. The other thing you want to look at, like if we had an engine mechanical issue that was common to all cylinders, maybe it would be even, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we're good. One rule of thumb, again, one that I believe I have to credit John Thornton on is rule of thumb is minimum of 30 amps peak to valley on a gasoline engine for relative compression. As you can see here, it's probably hard to see, but the delta, which is I don't know if you can point to the box, Brian. The delta there is 43.6 amps. So certainly seems to be pretty good based off the relative compression. The green trace is a pressure transducer in the vacuum or the intake manifold. And very similar to the relative compression trace, we're looking for each one of the times that,
Oh, what happened?
Sorry.
Okay.
each one of the times that green trace descends or goes down, that is a piston going down on a intake stroke, and it's basically that piston is connected to the intake manifold because the intake valve is open. So each time the piston comes down, it's pulling on the intake manifold, which is what we call in the industry as intake pulls. We're looking for those intake pulls to be pretty consistent. We're looking for the peaks of them to be pretty consistent. Now, there's more to it than that, but we can, at a glance, we can see that that the engine appears to be in pretty good condition. So the animation is kind of goofy. You could probably click through them though, Brian.
Guys, I just want to let everyone know that I'm getting like some surprise hail thunderstorms happening, and I'm the one streaming the internet.
Oh, okay. We'll
So
try to
just-
breeze through this.
Yeah, just in the
Should
event
be-
something happens, it may not come back.
So what could be causing a rough idle with increased manifold pressure and okay fuel trims based off of our mass airflow system at idle? Which the answer is unfortunately given away here. We kind of brought it up earlier. It was one of the things on our list.
Mute yourself.
What's up with
That's
that?
hail hitting my garage door. I'm sorry.
Crazy.
Crazy.
More tornadoes, okay?
Anyways, EGR is one that comes to mind for me. I'm going to look at scan data on the next capture. Brian? And this is just to see if there's any desired EGR flow at this point. You can see at the bottom here, if you hit the next the button again, you'll see an animation point. You can see here the stepping EGR flow duty cycle, current 0 and staying at 0. So it doesn't appear the PCM has like lost its mind in command and EGR. Hit the EGR duty cycle 0. But guess what we see with a thermal image?
It's hot.
It's hot. And that's something to keep in mind, guys. For those of you that aren't aware, you shouldn't have, by the way, it's good when you have an rough idle concern like this. At least in my practice, I've tried not, for EGR alone, I've tried not to increase RPM off of idle. And the reason is for this, you shouldn't have EGR flow at idle, but if you've been testing and you've been revving it, then you should have some EGR flow that's been taking place during your revving or test drives. So it's important when you're trying to determine if you have EGR flowing at idle, which is not good, then you need to keep that in mind. So, but in any case, we have been just sitting here idling. We haven't done anything else. You can see the EGR through this file. Click to the next button. Are we finished here? Do we need to do anything else?
Either replace the EGR.
Should we replace EGR?
Should we look at desired command?
We looked at the scan tool. It didn't look like it was commanding anything on.
Unplug it. The electric.
Yeah, that's a quick test, but you guys, I'm not efficient. I like to play with scopes. Let's hit the next button.
No.
This is not what I recommend doing. Unplugging the EGR, like Brian said. Let's say, for example, according to scan data, it doesn't look like the ACM has lost its mind in trying to command this EGR. But maybe something on the circuit is happening that's causing it to open, right? So in this case, I scoped it because I just wanted to see it. And what I did was, as I showed at the left side of the screen, what a non-commanded EGR looks like. Hit the button. And then hit it again. Go to it again. And from here, you can see where the scan tool commanded the EGR on, and then you hit it again, and it'll be where the scan tool was, the function was turned back off. So the more efficient way, by the way, is unplugging the EGR. But I just wanted to show you that scope capture of the EGR control circuits. Hit the screen again. So in our case, again, probably overkill, but we decided to use our special tool, which is a Cigar City Maduro brown can of pretty good beer, brown ale, EGR block-off tool. And the next screen, we have success. So blocking off the EGR tube there, the vehicle started running perfectly, as you could see from the map sensor here. We are now at 8.8 inches of mercury displayed at manifold absolute pressure. So if you take, again, your 29.4 barometric pressure minus the 8.8 that shows up on a scan tool, your manifold gauged vacuum should be at 20.6 inches of mercury, which is pretty much where we expect it should be. And then your fuel trims are a little bit better here, closer to about 6% as opposed, or a little less actually, with a negative 0.8. So there you go. Any questions with you guys or anybody in the attendees? I'd love to.
So was it
hopefully
mechanically stuck open?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we determined that there's no control,
yeah.
control going to it. We blocked it off, and we could see. So yeah, we replaced the valve, and everything's happy. And I don't really have much to report on the other stuff, but other than none of the stuff came back after replacing the battery and clearing that stuff out. Cool.
Very cool.
Guys, I gotta apologize. I muted myself on the Zoom screen, so everyone of you guys were fine, but everyone on YouTube could hear it the whole time.
Okay.
It's streaming my mic, so I think it still came through, but we'll see. I'm muting again.
All right, Brian, you want to stop sharing?
Yeah, sorry.
So yeah, we're almost close to 2 hours, guys. I apologize. But is there any activity? Any of the chats?
We still got 90 people watching. So.
I mean, any questions, any feed?
One guy said he never would have thought about the thermal test. Those thermal imagers are pretty freaking awesome.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's not like I've had one for years, so I would just usually quickly touch it.
It's not like you need one to figure out.
Or infrared, infrared, or just quickly touch it or spray it with water or something.
Just put your hand on it and hold it like as tightly as you can.
I mean, that's happened with like I think it was a 4.2. Like there's vacuum lines to the EGR that are easily switched with another one, and you know after doing an intake job or something, and all of a sudden it runs rough.
Bryn, they want to know what class you're teaching at Super Saturday.
We're teaching a snap-on hands-on scope class. It's should be all day and should be, I'd say at least the majority of the class is going to be physically working on cars. There's going to be some PowerPoint, kind of like Pete's deal. This class is primarily for snap-on users that either they've had the tool and they really don't know much about the scope, or they've played with it and they are frustrated because they can't figure out how to get what they expect to see on the screen, or maybe the only way they can get anything remotely close to what they expect to see is through guided component tests. Isn't that what it's called? So that's what the class is, hands-on scope class for Snap-on specifically. Some of us use more than one scope. I own multiple scopes, and there's some differences between one scope and another. If you're familiar with one and you go to use a Snap-on, you may not realize, how to get a really great trace, or I should say a good trace. You may be making some mistakes. I made some mistakes for a long time using a Snap-on scope, not realizing, how to use it properly. So that's pretty much the point of the class. It should be a good time. I'm going to have some of the other Trained by Techs members helping out.
No, that's a quick mention of Super Saturday. And obviously, I believe when is our next meeting? So that way we can have our discussion, or I should say our next discussion night.
I don't know that we've set a date, have we? But I would guess 2 to 4 weeks or something like that, guys.
Yeah,
Probably
I'll
about
say
right.
2
Yeah.
to 4 weeks, and we're hoping to have some.
The website should be up and running by then, I hope, and that way we can start getting people signed up.
Yeah, we're hoping to have David Wagner on at that time. We're hoping the website's up and running, and we can kind of talk about the event. So, should be pretty amazing. We're fortunate to be invited out. Keith Perkins is teaching his, which it'll be all day as well, right?
Yeah.
Be kind of like almost like a live car programming class, right? Because you're going to have like a setup where you can do some stuff in the class.
Yeah, thanks to Michael Broccolo, I've got quite a few modules that we're going to be doing some bench setups on. So we're going to do the majority of the class throughout the day, and depending upon how much I have bench setup wise, will depend upon how much of it we do PowerPoint and how much we do live. The class is designed as a full 8-hour PowerPoint class with walkthroughs, but in the event that we have a module that would meet what I would like to cover within the class, we'll go ahead and do it live.
Yeah, I don't want to talk, and I don't want to give away all the details. I kind of want to just talk about Super Saturday now, but we within 2 to 4 weeks, we want to do one that has more detail about what's going to be going on there.
Absolutely.
So did we hit everything on the agenda, Brian?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, sorry to keep you guys so long. We really appreciate you hanging out with us. We had a good time. Hopefully you had a good time. Just remember, go to training, subscribe to our channel, not just our channel. There's lots of great channels out there. L1, New Level, Super Mario. There's a lot of them out there. I feel bad even mentioning them because I'm sure I'm forgetting, obviously going to be forgetting a lot of them.
Yeah,
There's that voltage drop diagnostics.
Yeah, there's
Mr. PJ.
Oh,
I had to bring him up just because he told me I never mentioned him. So,
well, I was going to mention him earlier when we were talking about giving a taste because at one point in a thread on Facebook, he was saying that Brandon coming on Facebook and doing some of those interactive case studies within cylinder and pressure signature stuff really kind of opened up his eyes to what was available in the aftermarket as a dealer technician. So I appreciated that comment. I think it's cool. Also helped me out with a Toyota wiring diagram a few weeks ago. So thank you, PJ. Called him Walter on accident.
also Joe's Auto Electric, and yeah, that's why I was like, man, it's hard to hit all of them. I'm trying to hit everybody that's in the chat that has a channel. But the main thing is get training in general, right? Get
training. I mean, if you're on YouTube, consider the source. But there's a lot of great sources out there.
A lot of really good local trainings too with CTI. Some of the Napa classes are fantastic. Really it depends upon your trainer.
It's hard to say because we want to promote training, but just like anything else, some are better than others. But standard ATG, CTI, Napa, I personally, there's very few classes I've been to that I've felt like I wasted my time. Most of them I've walked away with some information that is helpful to me. So
since we're closing out, sorry, my wife, this is her holding a piece of hail that was just hitting my roof.
Oh my gosh.
She just brought her phone to me, yeah.
Time for a free roof.
Yeah, that's perfect time. I think it's time to get a roof done, babe.
It's exciting.
Yeah, we have a $15,000 estimate to replace ours right now.
That's
wow. What's your deductible?
Well, first of all, it has to be damaged for the insurance to come for it, so it's just due to be replaced. Unfortunately,
well, you just need a hailstorm.
Yeah, exactly,
Mine's
or a
been
hurricane.
Due to be replaced. Well, okay, it actually just needs to be replaced now because of all the damage. But
Cool. Well, let's let these guys go. Thank you again so much for tagging along, and keep an eye out for us. We should be back 2 to 4 weeks is what we're expecting, and look forward to seeing you then.
Alrighty. Take care, guys.
Have fun, stay dirty. If you can do it, I can do it. All those things, right?
Good night, guys.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.